So he said to me, "You have a lot to say." And I said, "First of all, you're just discovering this now." So then he says, "Well, why don't you do a podcast?" And I said to him, we'll definitely need to iron it out because I listened to a lot of wrestling podcasts. So that was the first thought that came to my mind. But it was like, I don't know how to make mine different. I don't want to feel like a fraud. I don't want to feel like I'm ripping off somebody's work. So then I said, nobody has, like, we get so much negative crap in the news every day that I don't even bother watching it anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's all, this guy's dead, this guy's in politics, this guy's in trouble for something stupid.
Hello and welcome to The View from 4 feet and 3 inches. I'm your host, Cassidy Huff. I am a white woman. I have my blonde hair tied back today. I have my black rimmed glasses on, my baby blue podcasting headphones, and a bright orange shirt that says disability is not a dirty word. Thanks to Easter seals for that. I'm sitting in a faux brown leather chair with some pillows behind me. And I have a wonderful virtual guest with me today. The amazing virtual guest is Benen. Hi, Benen.
How are you, Cassidy?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. And for those of you who need a bit of a description, I'm a white guy with brown hair, blue eyes, a beard that sticks out like I live in the woods. I'm currently wearing my plaid red shirt and pajama shorts.
I love it. I'm wearing sweatpants underneath this, so hey, love it. Okay, Benen, so right before we started recording, you said that you've been waiting to talk to me for 3 years?
Absolutely, because I noticed you, or my mother pointed you out to me when I was developing my own podcast, which we'll talk about later on, the Sit Down Standout show. And she pointed out to me that you had voiced a character in the animated series Spirit Riding Free. And
It's true.
I grew up on the film Spirit Stein of the Cimarron, so I thought, okay, I need to talk to this woman not only as an entertaining guest, but to get advice for myself so that I could find a way that I'm comfortable with to get into the voiceover industry, to be able to do a lot of what you're doing in terms of just putting yourself out there in the world, because I honestly didn't even know what Facebook was till I was in high school.
I love it. Hey. That's funny. So, yeah, I did not know that fact. You came across my inbox and I was like, sure, come on the show. That sounds great. So I'm so excited that you're here and that we get to chat finally. Thank you so much for being on.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. Anytime that I get to be on the other side of the interview chair, it's a nice change.
Yeah, I know. I feel it. So let's talk about you. This whole podcast is about you. So for the rest of the show, let's talk about you. So tell me, for those who maybe don't know, who you are, what you're all about.
Well, I'm Benen Dykstra. I know a lot of people get those mixed up because of how long the name is, and it's a Dutch last name, and I always just say, call me Ben. It gets to the point much quicker. But I was born January 21st, 1998, on a Wednesday, 10 weeks premature at 3 pounds, 9 ounces, born with cerebral palsy. My family likes to joke that, he was so excited to see the world, he couldn't wait another few weeks. And I grew up, for the most part, like for the first, I want to say until high school, I lived in a small town called Cayuga, Ontario, Canada. For people who know what the town is, it's a small town known for Cayuga Motor Speedway, which is a drag race strip. But other than that, I think it has less than 20,000 people in it. So it's a nice place to grow up if you want to raise children in a safe and quiet environment. But for a person with cerebral palsy who has a lot of ambition to see what life has to offer,
to get out,
certain point, it's like, let me out!
Yeah, no, I totally get it. I grew up in like a relatively small-ish town, and a lot of the people I graduated high school with are still there. And that's just kind of, what you do when you're born and raised there. And so I always felt like, even in high school, I was like, I am not made for this. I was like, please get me out. I am done. Over it. So I can totally share that sentiment. So talk a little bit about after you finally got out. I'm assuming you did.
Well, I feel like in a way I did, but in a way I didn't. Because, like most kids, when we moved somewhere else, it's not really by choice. We go because mom says so. So we went to an equally small town called Halliburton in Ontario, which is basically a cottage country environment. And then when I graduated high school is when they decided to move up there because my parents wanted to get out of our mortgage, which financially totally understand that. But at the same time, I'm also going off to college, which is for anyone, regardless of whether you have a disability or not, somewhat exciting and somewhat terrifying. So I went to Durham College, which is in Oshawa, Ontario, for radio broadcasting and contemporary media. Because everyone kept telling me, Ben, you've got the radio voice. But at the time, I was like, okay, you want me to work with those things in the car that play music all the time? It's like, I don't want to hear those guys talk. It's like, I just want my music. Why would I want to work in radio at first? But my initial goal was to learn the skills necessary to get a job as a commentator for professional wrestling. Because I've loved pro wrestling since I was 8 years old. Next year marks 20 years since I started watching it. So that's initially what my goal was when I went into broadcasting. And then I graduated after about 2 years of that. And then the world shuts down with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes, something all of us know too well.
Yes, and then I had to go back to Halliburton and get used to that area because I lived in Oshawa for my entire time at college. And basically when I did that, that was the closest thing I could explain as a bit of a drug trip. Because, not that I did drugs, but because it's such a switch from the tiny area of Halliburton and Cayuga, where you have to ask your parents to take you anywhere, and to go to a restaurant, you probably have to drive 30 minutes to an hour to go somewhere to have some fun, to where you go to Durham College in Oshawa, and then on every corner, there's Tim Hortons's, there's a bus that you can take, there's places where you can go see music, and it was like, I'm excited about this, but I'm also terrified because of things that can happen, and it's like, here, let me take every one of my parents' rules and break them.
Every single one. I know. I call my mom regularly and I'm like, remember when you told me when I was a kid not to do this specific thing? Guess what I just did?
Yeah, remember when you said don't go to class in your pajamas? I went every day and it was like...
Yeah, every day.
They say freshman 15 is what you gain in the first semester when you get there. Try 30 in my case. Because I didn't know how to cook at the time and was on the unlimited meal plan.
Yeah, that happens. I didn't gain the freshman 15. I went to a conservatory and a performing arts conservatory. And so we were just run to the bone. I was in dance classes every 5 minutes. And I didn't gain it, but you know who did? My service dog. My service dog did gain the freshman 15. He loved college a little too much.
Well, and, I mean, it's hard not to give those things treats.
It's true. And so, but the thing is, I was in dance classes, and what did he do while I was in dance classes? He sat in the back of the room. So he didn't do anything, you know? Like, the most he did was walk to and from class, which is still a feat, but not enough, apparently, to burn calories. And so he gained a little bit more than the freshman 15, I think.
I will say that you're fortunate that you can have a service dog, because we've contemplated it for me as an emotional support animal. But with anything, there's a lot of rules that you have to have, because it's a dog that they'll train for 4 years to accommodate a person's needs. They got to match you up. My father would not follow all of the rules because you're not supposed to feed him people food.
Nope.
My dad wouldn't care.
Yeah. Champ is getting older. He's almost 8. And we've broken those rules. They never said don't feed him people food, but they were like, don't feed him people food from the table was the main thing.
Yeah, my dad does that daily.
Yeah.
With our black lab Bailey at my parents' house.
Yeah, I will say Kaz's dad is the worst.
Yeah.
100%. He has a routine with him where he shares apples with him and green beans and all the rest. So Champ gets his fair share of people food.
I'm shocked it's the vegetables that he shares with the dog.
It's the fruits and the vegetables, 100%. Yeah. Which is great.
No, but it's weird because I would think that most dogs would refuse that. I jokingly call our dog a pothead because what happens is my dad will give her all the dirty pots and pans at the end of the meal for her to lick up. So I say she's the greatest pothead I know.
Yeah, no, Champ is a lab, so he will just literally eat anything. Anything you give him, he will eat. I promise.
Yeah. So college was definitely a unique experience. But then after that, the world shuts down. It's COVID-19. Now, I'm the type of person who, for the most part of my life, has been a homebody, likes being at home in front of the television with all the worst foods that you shouldn't be eating. So when, everybody is freaking out, not discounting the tragedy of all the losses of COVID, but in my head, it's like everyone is freaking out over toilet paper rolls where I practically live at home all of the time. So it's like, well, guys, I'm just going to go save the world by staying in and taking a nap. You can thank me later. And then it just dragged on and on and on. And I got to a point where, okay, I have to do something because if I don't, then I'm going to go nuts because I'm still living with mom and dad at the time. And dad's kind of the guy who's like, things go my way or else sort of thing in terms of pretty much he is like a guy that is a man's man, so to speak. It's like, okay, we don't really talk about our feelings, or we don't I want a nice quiet house. I'm not a quiet person. So no. And then
not gonna happen.
No. So at some point I thought to myself, there are so many people currently stuck, and this is in a way normal for people with disabilities because I have cerebral palsy, lived with it my whole life. For some people, this is normal, but for others, this is getting extreme because of medical issues that they might be having. So out of my own frustration for a lack of what the heck am I going to do with my life? I don't want to get skill atrophy and forget all that I learned in school.
Right.
A guy that worked with me in town, his name's Tim Toffelmeyer. He works at Community Living Trent Highlands in Halliburton, which is an organization that helps people with physical and intellectual disabilities find work. So he said to me, "You have a lot to say." And I said, "First of all, you're just discovering this now." So then he says, "Well, why don't you do a podcast?" And I said to him, we'll definitely need to iron it out because I listened to a lot of wrestling podcasts. So that was the first thought that came to my mind. But it was like, I don't know how to make mine different. I don't want to feel like a fraud. I don't want to feel like I'm ripping off somebody's work. So then I said, nobody has, we get so much negative crap in the news every day that I don't even bother watching it anymore. Yeah. Because it's all, this guy's dead, this guy's in politics, this guy's in trouble for something stupid. There's no good news channel. Yeah. So I decided to tell stories of individuals who were like me that live with extraordinary challenges, like cerebral palsy, like mental health issues, that are happy, that are standing out from the rest of people who are unfortunately might be unheard or might be forced to live a certain way due to their disability. And I said, you know what, you might have to sit down to live your life, but you can still stand out and do something with it.
There you go. And that's the name.
Yep.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, I think our shows were born out of similar circumstances. I started my podcast probably like a year and a half ago. And it was that exact thing. It was, I have a lot to say. And originally, the first few episodes were just me sitting in front of a camera with a topic in mind, just rambling about the topic. I did a few episodes like that. Kaz, my boyfriend, did a few episodes with me talking about like our love life and our love story and things like that, and accommodations in our relationship and frequently asked questions and stuff like that. And then I realized that I was really bored talking to myself by myself. So I was like, there has to be another way. There has to be another way that I can keep the show going where it's interesting, but I cannot be the only center of attention. I have to share the stage with somebody else. And so,
Same.
yeah, and then I started realizing, well, I have a lot of friends with disabilities. I wonder if any of them would be open to coming on and just talking and making it super chill and just talking about their life and their experiences and advice they have for younger disabled people and all the rest. And sure enough, I don't think I've gotten one no. I think every single person I've asked is like, yeah, absolutely. I'll come on your show. Absolutely. And it's amazing. I learn so much. And I'm constantly like, it's never boring. I'm constantly engaged and I'm constantly like, my brain is always stimulated with the conversation and I'm constantly like in a new conversation. So it's nice to not just be doing the same thing over and over again.
Right. And what surprises me is, first of all, that my show is older than yours. I didn't think that was the case because you were still making content prior to the podcast being on.
I know you want to see more of my content. That's why I started a Patreon just for you. If you subscribe to a monetary tier on my Patreon, you automatically get access to hours of unseen footage. Behind the scenes, post shows, weekly life updates, weekly private live streams, and of course, so many never-before-seen pictures and videos of Champ and Monty. So what are you waiting for? Head over to my Patreon and check out all of the perks that I have for you.
And yours is kind of the opposite, that like you had a lot of friends that were easily like, oh yeah, I'll come on. Before starting the podcast, I avoided the disability community like the plague. Because when I went to school, I was the only one with a disability that was purely physical. Everybody else was cognitive and they were going to stay in school till they were 21. And I didn't know how to handle individuals with such disabilities. I was always kind of scared of them. I was afraid that they would attack me or I would misunderstand a signal. I was afraid something would happen. So when people tried to pair me up with disabled individuals to hang out, the more you did it, the madder I was. And it was also, I didn't want to be taken back to memories of physiotherapy that I had gone through for years and years and years. Because I think I went to the same physio guy from the age of 2 until I was a teenager and never enjoyed a minute of it. So at the time, it was like, why would I even want to think about that?
Yeah.
But then it was also like remembering, first of all, like my mother has to tell me this often, that the world does not revolve around you. As much as it's kind of felt like it has in my childhood, being the only guy with a disability in our family, really. Like there's only 2 other people on my father's side that have a disability. One has spina bifida and one has an intellectual disability. And he was like an oven baby from like the 50s and 60s. But other than that, well, if you're born premature, sometimes what they'll do is they'll put you in the oven incubator to keep you warm. Other than that, there's pretty much no one on my side of the family that had a physical disability. So anytime somebody would put me with someone with a physical disability, I'd be like, how dare you compare me to that? Because to me, it seemed like, okay, these guys are going to go into school until they're 21. Then they're going to be like dropped off from relative to relative until they have to be in long-term care homes. And for me, it was like, I know that's not my future, so stop comparing me to those people.
Yeah.
So that's why
Yeah.
at the time I kind of had the resentment of that.
That's really interesting. Do you think that was at all like internalized ableism on your part?
Well, I'm going to say it's unintentional because
Well, yeah, 100%.
I never would have wished harm on anyone with a disability ever. And it was also that there have not been enough examples of succeeding people with disabilities out there in the mass media. Like, the only example I can think of from where I live is Terry Fox, is someone who was able to do so much with his disability, but then he wound up dying very young. So it's also the point of, okay, how can I believe that lives of disability individuals are going to get better when it's not talked about? And that's another catalyst of why I wanted to make the show in the first place.
Yeah, I totally understand. I was the exact same way. I grew up never seeing myself represented in anything. And I wanted to do so many things. I wanted to model, and I wanted to act, and I wanted to be on stage, and I wanted to sing, and I like name a stage and I was on it. So I was just always wanting to be the center of attention. My mom also frequently says the world does not revolve around me. And so I was always really wanting to make it in the entertainment industry. And I had big goals, and I wanted to be on the biggest stages in the world, and I wanted to be in front of as many people as possible. But I never saw myself being represented. So then I was like, can I actually do those things? Like, is that actually, like, what is my future gonna be? And I knew I was gonna bend my future to its will, make it what I wanted it to be. Because that's just who I am as a person, and I'm very stubborn, and I know how to get what I want and I know how to work for what I want. And so I knew that I was going to achieve the goals that I wanted, but I was always really discouraged because I always thought I was going to be the first one to do it. And it's kind of exciting being the first one to do something, but it's also a little discouraging because you're like, man, I can't ask anybody for any kind of advice, or I can't, like, nobody else understands it. At least that's what I thought at the time, right? I felt like I was very alone in the world. No one I knew, no one I knew in my school, even in my school district, had a physical disability and was still in like regular education classes or advanced classes. I was the only one who looked like me really anywhere I went, except for summer camp or the hospital. And so I always felt this sense of loneliness and frustration when I thought about my future, because I knew what I wanted to do and I knew how to get there. I was just the only one that looked like me in the room all the time. And so that's part of also why I made my podcast, is because I wanted others to see that they are not the only ones in their fields out there doing what they want to do.
It seems that we've rolled down very similar paths.
It's true. So let's talk about school for you. So you, I would imagine, were not in special education classes.
No, I wasn't, but part of me thinks that it might have been considered, because there is so often that, you know, you get an educational assistant or an EA with you, and they basically follow you around all the time, which for me, I didn't know any different because it happens so often. But now that I've grown and gone through so much, part of me was like, okay, maybe them being around people with disabilities as often as they are is not a good thing, because I felt more of a connection to the EAs than I did a lot of the students, because EAs are willing to listen to you, and they kind of have to as part of their job. So I found them more interesting to talk to than a lot of the students, because it felt like, okay, if I talk to a student and I find out that we have something in common, he's going to invite me over And then what's going to happen? I'm going to go to his house. Can I get
There's
in?
going to be stairs.
Or, because for some reason I've always sucked at geography and giving people directions, I'll be like, well, I live in Cayuga. I don't know my own address or postal code. And then we got to like plan the whole thing. And it was like, okay, I love meeting people, but there are certain places I don't ever want to meet people. And one of them is my own personal space. Like, I don't want someone coming into my house and it's not your stuff you're touching. I don't like that. I don't know what it is about me, but it's like, this is my safe space. I don't want you in there unless we've been friends for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally
I
understand.
think I've only had school friends over maybe twice. And whereas my older sister Holly, had friends come over practically all the time because she didn't have any disabled friends and they could drive. So it was like every time somebody would suggest it, I'd be like, why bother? I'd be like, I pretty much, when I went to school, was like, this is a job. I'm just going to show up, do my job, and go home. And then when I go home, turn on the cartoons and chug Pepsi like it's beer.
Yeah, that's exactly how I thought too. I was over school, especially in high school. Every thought I had was about how to get out. Like, I was done. My junior year, actually, I didn't really even go to school very much because I was dealing with a lot of health issues. And so I was in constant amounts of pain and no one understood what was happening. They couldn't figure it out. And so that was really frustrating. But at the same time, I was like, you're telling me I can just stay home and I can do all my school from here. And I actually don't even have to go to that hellhole. Okay. So I like milked that for as long as I possibly could because I was over high school. I just could not wait to get out and start my life. I was over the drama. I never subscribed to any of the drama. I was a cheerleader. I hated it. I was like every single high school thing. There were a few things that brought me joy, and it was choir, theater, and track. And that was it. And I hung on to those things until I couldn't any longer. But other than that, like those are the only reasons I showed up to school, was so that I could go to my extracurriculars.
Oh, I felt like I was done by grade 4 because it was like, okay, now it's actually starting to feel like work.
Yeah,
and
like work.
It was, yeah, and that was not what
You're
I
like, this
wanted
isn't fun anymore.
Yeah, and it was also like, they would have so many different kinds of things as you do in school. They have sports, they have the debate committee, they have the after-school program. My mother had to drag me to anything she pretty much signed me up for because it was like, in my mind, it's either going to be something that I can't really do physically because I tried to get myself involved in sports, and it's not that the kids and teams were rude to me, but they said to me, we don't want you to get hurt. So for your own safety, it's probably best if you just watch the soccer game or you watch the volleyball game, which I don't resent anybody for that. I understand. But at the same time, it's like, you're just blowing me off, aren't you? And then it was like, okay, they tried to get me onto the student council meeting in like grade 7 and grade 8. And I was like, do you know how many channels any of our ideas are going to have to go through? All we're doing is talking. I want action, damn it. Why am I even here if we're just talking? This is wasting my time. And it's like, I already spend 6 hours with you people a day. I don't want to talk to you guys anymore. I want to avoid humanity. Avoid humanity.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get it. So I think because I have a very strong younger audience, surprisingly. And I think for their sake, I would really like to talk about how you were able to work through those feelings, or if you were able to work through those feelings, like what kept you going? How did you get through school when you didn't want to?
Well, I think, part of it is because legally you don't have a choice.
Well,
like and my mother is a no-nonsense woman, so milking would not have worked because my sister tried. Like, she would say, okay, we're going to paint your face up like you have chicken pox so that you can try to get out of school. And then we tried to trick my mother into saying, oh, we have to stay home. I have the chicken pox. And she goes, okay, we'll take you to the doctor and they'll give you a big needle. And then I immediately caved.
No,
So
I
it
don't
was
want
like,
that.
yeah, but I would have to say it was because the EAs were very nice to me. And like, I had an EA, one EA, her name is Christine Gloyd. And she was basically my EA from like first grade to grade 6.
Wow.
So many years together and all the time around each other. So she heard me at my best and at my worst so many times. And she would also, she was nice enough, she had older children, she would let me borrow VHS tapes from her collection. And she would, like, around Halloween or Valentine's Day or my birthday, which is in January, there'd be like a little something in my backpack from her. And she was like, keep your mouth shut or I'll get in trouble from my people at work.
Don't tell anyone.
And yeah, without nice, like, I never had problems with teachers. I never had problems with EAs. Most of the time, like, I don't know why, but I'm terrified of angry people. Like, I'm terrified of yelling. So anytime someone yells at me, I go into scared dog mode where I'm like hiding in the corner, like, let me know what she's done. So it was like just not wanting to get that from them. And I think it was just, they were nice to me. I was nice to them. It was that easy.
Yeah. So I'm curious about your college experience. Can you talk a little bit? Can you talk a little bit about that? Did you feel like you had a different experience than you did in grade school and high school? And how did that differ? How did your accommodations differ? Did you have an EA, or as we call in the States here, a para? Same thing. Did you, like, how did you find it socially?
Well, when going to college, at first I went with the flow because it was like, mom told me, unfortunately, you have great grades, but not good enough for you. No, you have great grades, but not good enough for university level classes because you need like 90s and stuff. And I was a solid A-B guy. In high school, I made honor roll 3 years in a row out of the 4 that I was there. And it was cooking class that screwed me up in 10th grade because I came into it with a bad attitude and I didn't know how to navigate the kitchen. So then you go on to college. And at first I tried journalism because I heard from wrestling commentators, they would always say, I'm a broadcast journalist. I have the right to my opinion to say whatever I want. So I thought, oh, do that. But they were so stick to the facts. Don't add anything to what you're writing and what you're talking about, given the seriousness of a situation, which I understand. But I can't take life seriously all the time, which is why I don't talk about politics or religion on my show, because so many people take it so seriously, whereas I look at things to laugh at about those things. And so when you go to college, that was my first time living alone. So I lived on the residence at Durham, which was 2 hours away from where my parents are. So in a sense, they would come whenever I asked them to come, but it'd be like, it better be important because of how long they're driving. And my mom has basically been working since my father had to retire, get on disability, and now he's off disability selling lawnmowers from home.
Love it.
So mom has worked at community living for what feels like the entire time we've been in Halliburton now as kind of an administrative assistant, as well as she supports some of the kids or some of the people that come in, because some of them just want to go out to events, and she's like, well, I've had enough practice with him. So,
I know what I'm doing.
yeah, so then after a year of trying journalism and feeling absolutely miserable, because it was like, I don't really want to do the work. This is a whole new world. I want to explore all of Oshawa and do like all the stuff that I can't do at home, which was basically Cursed Like a Sailor, go out whenever I wanted, and wearing whatever I wanted, eating whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, as long as I wanted. So it was like PG in the sense of I'm not doing drugs and having lots of girls over, but it
Mhm.
was rated R from what I was doing at home, because it was
Mhm.
basically you go home, it's homework first, and you get dinner, but you're going to sit at the table until you get it done, kind of a
Mhm.
thing. Whereas in college, it's like they don't care really if you show up because they have your money anyway. You're on the unlimited meal plan, so as long as the dining hall's open, you can come and go as you please. So for me, it was such a different experience. It's one of the happy and kind of scariest experiences of my life.
Mm. Yeah, that's so interesting. Did you find it easier socially to relate to your peers?
No,
Oh.
because it felt so different. Well, first of all, it takes me a long time to feel like there have been times when I interview a guest on my podcast where I feel an instant connection. That's rare for me to feel an instant
Mm.
connection with people, because I can have this conversation with you and then be like 2 weeks later, who was I talking to? Because
Mm.
I'm such an open book and I talk so easily to people that
Mm.
it's different from an actual connection that you want to stick around with.
Mm.
Um, so like making actual connections and maintaining them has always been hard for me. Like I had one childhood best friend from kindergarten to 6th grade that I haven't seen since, that I had to do a school transfer. And part of that is on me. Part of that is the fact that he's a foster kid, or he was a foster kid, and it was hard to get in touch with him. But in school, I made the choice not to connect. I honestly made the choice to just enjoy, just kind of really avoid making relationships, because every time it felt like I would try to make a relationship growing up, it was like, okay, we've been friends for this long. You're moving on. I'm not able to move on. Like, you're leaving. So there's a part of me that says, why bother? Because either geography is going to take you away from him, they're going to move, or you're going to say something stupid because you don't know when to shut up. So in college, it was pretty much, I think, two friends that I'm still friends with today from the whole 3 years I was there.
Mm.
Um, One I lived with during my last year as my roommate. First time I ever lived with anyone that wasn't related to me. So that was an interesting one. And then Heather Snowden, who was with me in the journalism class, and then she just hung out with me. And William, we hung out like after our classes, and we went to the local St. Louis bar and grill after a class sometimes. And
Wow.
that was different, because it was like I feel so bad for William because he was living with me, and he is such a nice guy. He's not the kind of guy that will want to start any kind of conflict, and he apologizes a lot. He's that kind of a guy. And so I was unintentionally probably the worst roommate that you could ever have, in terms of when you come home from class, all you're thinking is, I'm exhausted. I need time to myself. Or sometimes I'd forget that I even had a roommate and I'd have my music cranked up. And then later I'm like, no, unintentionally you were probably an ass. And it was um and it was also unique because he is a member of the LGBTQ community. And my father was a bit concerned about that, just because he comes from a
Mm.
different time, so he wasn't sure how that would work. And I said to him, listen, I've established boundaries with him the day that we met, because I said to him, look, whatever lifestyle you lead, go right ahead. Just recognize that that's not the way I go, and if you respect that boundary, we'll be fine.
Mhm.
And then so we spent the year together, and it was interesting. I'm not sure I'm ready to do that again, just because I'm not the sharing type.
Mm.
And it was like, I don't know. It just feels weird to me. Like, because I've been such a guy that's in his own world so often, it's like, you know, we better be like in a committed relationship before I let you move in again. Just because nothing bad happened, nothing crazy happened. It was just
Sure.
something I wasn't used to.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I went from living with my family to, like, my sister was basically my roommate, right? Because we shared a bathroom, and we didn't share a room, but we shared a bathroom, and we are really close. So we did a lot of stuff together. Like, she was usually always in my room or vice versa. And then I went from that for the first 19 years, to moving 1,000 miles away from home. And I was alone. And because of Champ, my service dog, I had a room to myself. And so I was alone for the first time ever. And I was like, you know what? I kind of like this. I kind of love being alone. And I had friends over all the time, but it was very like on my schedule because I didn't have to worry about anybody else's schedule. And I lived alone. And then after I moved out of the dorm, I moved into a studio apartment by myself, and it was alone for probably like 2.5 years. And then I met my boyfriend Kaz, and we decided to move in together. And let me tell you, those first few months of living together, I was like, I'm gonna go crazy. I am like, I was so used to living alone at that point. Like, I knew how I did things. I knew how I wanted things done. And obviously, he's a whole nother person who does things differently, slightly even differently. And I was like, I am going to punch a wall. Like, I am so, like, things aren't getting done the way I want them to. Or, like, I don't just have to worry about my schedule. Like, now it's our schedule. Like, what does that even mean? And if I go to events, like, he's mostly with me most of the time. So now we have to figure out transportation, and like, is he working? Does he have class during those times? I don't know. So it was very difficult, I will say, to go from living completely alone, only doing what I wanted, to living with somebody else. I was kind of in shock, I think, for the first few months. Now we have it down because we've been living together for over almost 2 years, actually. And so now we have it pretty down to a science. I'm alone for most of the day, so I still get that alone time. He comes home. We have chores that we each do and stuff like that. But it was definitely an adjustment when we first started living together, because I was like, it's not just me anymore, and I'm gonna go crazy. This is not good.
Yeah, I can totally understand that, because communication is probably one of my favorite things. Is like, not only can I talk people to death to the point where they're like, okay, I need time away from Ben. He's talked too much. Like, literally, we'll go to my grandparents' house at this point in time, and it's a 4-hour drive. I talk pretty much the entire drive because what else am I going to do? There's no video game that can distract you for that long. Yeah. And then it's like both my mom and dad and I were all aching. They've all heard me talk for 4 hours. It's like, okay, let's go. Like, I don't interact. Like, I don't sit in the family room of my grandma's house. I never really did growing up. It was like, okay, well, I'm at her place, which, by the way, has not, like, physically changed since before I was born. Mm-hmm. So I grew. The accommodations did not. So that wasn't always fun going to grandma's house. But it was like, thank goodness they were sweet enough to let me have my own room so I can just watch VHS tapes, get away from whatever random topics my father is going to talk about, because I don't understand the mechanical stuff he talks about all the time.
Yeah, totally get you.
I'm a one-woman show. That means that I write all of these scripts, film all of these videos all by myself. But I also have a team of amazing editors. And as you can imagine, it costs some money to be a 23-year-old entrepreneur. So that's why I started a Ko-Fi. And so many of you were asking how you can support me being able to do what I love and make videos for all of you. That's why I started a Ko-Fi. If you head on over to my Ko-Fi and drop a donation, you automatically become a representation booster. And I shout out one representation booster in my weekly YouTube video. So head on over to my Ko-Fi, drop a donation, and who knows, maybe next week I'll shout you out. Back to the video.
So let's move on to your podcast.
Yeah.
who do you think, like, talk a little bit about the structure and how you figured out the structure of your podcast, and then also who you think the, like, coolest person you've ever interviewed is.
Oh, ouch. The coolest one.
They might not be listening.
Well,
it's okay.
Well, I mean, okay. Well, I'm going to go backwards to the development of it because it started, like I said, from the place of frustration, not being able to figure out what to do next after college. Because unfortunately, I did not have an apartment to fall back on. I only moved into the current apartment I live in now almost 2 years ago after being on a waiting list for 6 years. Which is ridiculous. I often make the joke that there's not enough old people getting pushed down the stairs.
That's pretty good.
But with the podcast, at first, I didn't really have a structure at the beginning. I don't think anybody does overnight because at first they're just trying to get it out there because there's so much content being made every day.
Yeah.
I think at first it was, okay, a disabled person I could find, get them on. Doesn't matter the size of the following, doesn't matter who it is. I recorded my first interview was a 2.5-hour conversation with a woman from Florida who I had just met for the first time, and then I turned it into a half-an-hour interview weeks later.
Wow.
Elizabeth Bradley, she has cerebral palsy, but she can walk with it. And she's got 3 kids that also have a disability of their own. So
my God.
Yeah, so that was an interesting first one.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I think gradually over time I was like, okay, you need to figure something out to distinguish yourself because you're obviously going to need to be unique. Otherwise, you'll just be another podcast on the airwaves. So my thought was, okay, March is Cerebral Palsy Awareness Month. So let's focus on spreading awareness towards individuals with that condition around March. And then I used Stats Canada as kind of an ability awareness guide. So then I know, okay, this is the guest that you want to look for this month. And then just following around on Instagram and Facebook and what few social media platforms I use because I only can understand so much. I don't do TikTok because it's I don't need videos like that. I don't need Snapchat. You don't need every social media platform that somebody creates. But I use Facebook and Instagram a lot because we're all willing to really tell our stories. It's just a matter of, okay, is the timing right for you to come on? Does it make sense to talk about what you're doing now versus okay, let's just get this random guy in the middle of March that does not have cerebral palsy but has a visual disability. That doesn't make any sense. So that's kind of how I developed the formula. So I usually will have now at this point, I make a post of a picture lineup of all of the people that are doing it for the month. I think the thing that bugs me the most is when it's a month with 5 weeks in it. Because then it's you think you have enough at 4, and then you remember, oh crap, it's week 5, I gotta get another guy. Or when it's okay, you only find out that something happened with them, that they can't make the interview the day of. And it's
hate when that happens. I've also had that happen though. I've been the one to cancel, so I'm I know how it is. I know how it feels.
Yeah, I kind of thought for a minute that might happen with us just because No, but just because from what I've seen of your content creation, I thought this chick has got to be so much busier than I am.
Yeah, it's true. I create content every single day on all platforms.
I was impressed with the old lady jar.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Which, by the way, Cass, she is not old.
I'm not. It's true. I'm not. Very young, actually. So what do you think is the biggest thing you've learned from doing your podcast?
Well, I think that the biggest thing I learned that I was wrong about my thoughts toward the disability community that I had for a long time growing up is that if you're pretty much physically disabled, that you shouldn't expect much, that there's not much of a future. I was so freaking wrong about that. And if what I had for my thoughts as a little kid offends anyone listening, sorry, but if you don't know any better, then you can't really help but think those things.
Yeah, and like growth is a thing.
Yeah, that's what people are so quick to cancel these days. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, and I admit that I was wrong that there are so many unique disabilities out there that it may be a life sentence that you have to live with, say, cerebral palsy or functional neurological disorder or a muscular dystrophy. But that is not a death sentence at all. You just have to figure out, okay, what do I love? What can I do to work around this?
Yeah. And how can I, the world is not made for us. So how can I navigate the world that's not made for me in a way that makes sense for me?
Right. And at least try your best to leave it in a better place than you found it.
Yeah, 100%. I'm going to go back to the question. Who do you think is the coolest guest you've interviewed, or who's the guest that you've learned the most from?
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say to every guest that's ever been on my show, you're all cool in your own unique way.
You're all amazing and we love you.
Yes. But I would have to say the one that I learned the most from was Be Real Right Now with Jules and Marie Rodriguez. And they are a husband and wife couple. And the husband used to be a teacher before he contracted ALS. So now they've pretty much joined up with the whole ALS community and recruited a huge following, which is awesome.
That's amazing.
And part of it, to me, what was baffling is that you never know how that kind of a situation will affect a person's marriage. They could easily say, you know what, for the sake of your feelings, why don't we break this off and go our own separate ways or whatever. But they said to me in an interview that they have singular therapists and then they have a couples therapist for themselves because they've also got their child, their 6-year-old, to think about while dealing with all of this. And to see posts of them talking about how their love has grown stronger even while dealing with this stuff. And despite the fact that he has ALS, he takes the time to collect flowers from his own garden and go over to his mom to make her day nice. This is Disney level stuff, man.
That's so cute.
Yeah, so the idea that you may be dealing with a problem absolutely sucks, and you're right to have a day where you cry and go into the ice cream face first. But
Sure.
what matters is that, okay, you do not let the negativity consume your life, and you try to make the most of the time that you have. Because it could come at any time. Like I've said for the last couple episodes, the disability community is the all-inclusive club that no one really wants to join, but we could join at any time without an invitation.
And you will join it if you're fortunate enough to age.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So support us now.
Yeah. So learn about us now. Give us money now.
Give us an increase. Give us a fair increase.
Give us an exactly. There you go. Yeah, I think having a show where you talk to other people is so interesting because I've learned so much from my guests, right? I've learned a lot. I've learned about politics and the inner workings of it. I've learned about different laws that affect the disability community here in the States. I've learned about travel, and I think it was one of the most recent interviews I did was with Corey Lee. And you can find him on Curb Free Corey Lee. And he is incredible. He travels for a living. That's just what he does. And he had so many cool travel tips for people with disabilities that I never even thought about. Like, if you're going to fly, you should talk to the ground crew who's going to load your chair in to the plane before you even take off. I didn't even know that was an option. That's so cool. And I learned a lot about travel blogging, and also just like he publishes so many travel guides online for others with disabilities to make sure that they have the most accessible experience possible, no matter where they're traveling to. He's traveled to like 50 different countries, and it's wild. So I learned a lot from him. I've learned so much from so many of my guests. And I think that's the most fun part of my job is getting to interview different people and just talk to them about life and about how they live their life and the differences, if there are any, and just what makes life so special is the experiences that we all have and getting to talk to people about that.
100%. And I've found that throughout the course of doing this, because right now, October 5th is our 3-year anniversary of when I started the show. And then by, I think, October 8th will be episode 150.
Whoa.
I think the greatest thing that I found is that we're really not all that different in terms of like, yeah, you live in a different part of the world where the government works differently. But I mean, we all have days where it's like, okay, this is going to be great. I'm going to go to work. Then we have days where we're like, oh, if only I could give my boss the middle finger. Like, we all have that similar thing. I think if I was to say the one thing that bothers me about the show would be the fact that I have met more people that I felt a connection with through my podcast than I ever did in my youth and in school and stuff. So, and it's also because as a broadcaster, you're supposed to be a professional. You're supposed to be like polite, serious, respectful all the time, where I have met a lot of strong women over the course of the podcast, and I've never been in a relationship like you have with Cass. I haven't got to that point yet. So to see so many women on the show that have been done inspiring things and continue to be so successful, it's hard not to feel an attraction towards a lot of them. Yeah. But for the record, for anyone who I have flirted with, remember that I always did it privately after we were done with our interview. And part of
never
me
publicly on camera.
No. And part of me is like, I understand that as a broadcaster, it's not the most appropriate thing to do. But part of me, and I hope this gets heard by hundreds of people on the internet, I will never apologize for it because, number one, it was never crude. It was always like, hey, do you want to get a coffee sometime? Or do you want to, like, if you're ever in the area, do you want to hang out? Because you miss 100% of the opportunities you don't take.
Yeah, exactly. Before I get to my very last question, are those the spirit horses behind you?
Not exactly. Those are horses, just regular horses. But I will say that I haven't actually watched the Spirit Riding Free show, but it was the fact that, Cassidy Huff has a disability just like I do, and she's able to do a show like that, where I was like, oh my God, there's hope for people like myself. That's why I was like, I need to talk to this lady. The only thing I had with the show, I was like, why did it take them so long to do it? Because the movie came out in 2004 when I'm 6 years old, and now it's coming out when I'm like almost in my 20s. I'm like, it's not the same anymore. You can't look at it the same way anymore because Spirit would be like a grandfather if he was a real horse.
Well, yeah, I think my horse's name was Beans in the show. And I think that episode came out, it came out in 2020. And the only reason I remember that was because I did so much press for it, and I was supposed to do the press for it in person. I was supposed to like fly out to LA and do this whole thing right as I was graduating high school, but I couldn't because of the pandemic. So I did it virtually. And so the only reason I remember when it even came out was because it was a wild time for me to literally be on the computer every single day for hours, just doing phone interviews and press interviews and all of the above. It was a time. So yeah, it was, I agree. I didn't even really know. I had heard of Spirit the movie, but I never watched it. So I never really knew like the lore around it. But yeah, I mean, it's a great movie. It's a great show that I was on. It was an amazing fandom, and good job, DreamWorks. A little too late, but that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm also like, why is Disney doing so many remakes? Because I love the fact that you're opening up the old films to a new generation, like when they came out
Yeah,
with
sure.
The Lion King. But at the same time, it's like, you have so many creative people where you are, and you have so many, like, they're really starting to open up with, okay, people from different backgrounds, people from different diversities to make new movies. Awesome. But it also feels like you have to have like a whole cabinet somewhere of fresh ideas. You don't
New
necessarily,
ideas.
you don't necessarily need to remake every 90s Disney film.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so my very last question for you is, like I mentioned earlier, I do have a young audience. And so I get comments all the time from young disabled people that are asking me about self-love and self-acceptance and accepting your disability and body acceptance and all of the rest. And so my question for you is, what would you tell those younger, like what advice would you give younger disabled people who might be watching or listening?
Well, I think what I would say is the same thing I say at the end of episodes of my podcast would be just keep calm and roll on, because no matter what your disability is, no matter what challenges you face, you will have rough days where it absolutely sucks, but you will have people who support you and care about you in your environment. You may have to look for them. You may not realize that they're always there, but you're never alone when dealing with disabilities. You just have to find what makes you happy while living with it, who is in your corner 100% no matter what, and know that everything you do with your life, someone loves it, someone values it, and life is for enjoying, not for wishing that, oh, I wish I could do this, or I wish that I didn't have this particular problem. Do whatever you enjoy, as long as you're not hurting anyone else and you're bringing joy to others around you.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Ben, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad that we finally got to connect.
I know. I can't wait to have you on my show.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Now I
So,
don't have to
make
go
sure-
around your. Now I don't have to go around your agents again.
I know. There you go. And thank you for watching and listening to this episode of The View from 4 feet and 3 inches. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Give me a 5-star rating, depending on where you're watching or listening. Comment down below on your favorite part of this podcast. I know I have so many. Make sure to go follow me on all my other platforms, because I do post on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook Reels, and YouTube Shorts every single day. I have a YouTube vlog that comes out every Wednesday and a podcast episode here on The View from 4 feet and 3 inches, out everywhere you listen to podcasts every single Sunday. Thanks so much for watching and listening, and we will see you next week. Bye!